بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in amma ba'd. So last week we had left off discussing this idea, this concept of giving, why it's so challenging, why it's so difficult to give, what our relationship should be with that wealth. We also had a discussion on whether giving in public, what should that look like? You know, what is a meaningful way to get funding, right? So you have a lot of institutions, especially masajid, especially religious institutions, that rely on donations, right? It's a heavy donation model, and we had said that, okay, well, people don't necessarily like the bidding, right? The auction style, like the auction style donations. What is the alternative to that? The other alternative that was suggested was like, okay, just kind of throw a number out there and be like, hey, listen, this is what we're looking for. What is the problem with that?
It might not be successful.
Yeah. So historically, it's very difficult because what happens is like there are certain models that people who are in donations use, and they're like, hey, this model has been the one that is historically most effective. So how much are people willing to experiment in a donation space?
Not when it's like your livelihood.
Right. So if your institution's trying to survive, right? If I want my institution to survive, would that be the space that I want to experiment in? Probably not, right?
Do they do it at the same time?
So what you can do is like for smaller,
Kind of combine,
you know what I mean? So what do you do is like you experiment on a significantly smaller scale, and I think that's a reasonable way to do it. There are a number of different models. So I think within larger institutions that do a lot of these donation things, they have something that's called fund development. And what does that mean? That means like, okay, well, how do we meaningfully engage donors so that we can keep our institution functional and afloat? And there are many institutions that are like several $1 million, right? You know, to keep those institutions afloat. So sometimes they'll have a smaller, more private, intimate circle of wealthy donors who they'll like every once in a while they'll keep a good relationship with them, and they'll kind of sit down with them and they'll be like, hey, listen, hey, we need this money, and they'll do like a small auction type thing within that smaller gathering, within that smaller setting. Granted, the scale of giving in that smaller setting is going to be like significantly more because the donors are the significant, they're the main donors. And then you have like a public style auction, right? Like in Jummah. So some Jummahs, when you do like that auction style thing, some of them are very successful and some of them are less successful. Why is that?
Depending on the target and depending on what they're collecting.
Depends on the amount of public shame.
Right. How much you're willing to make people feel bad. So emotional blackmail is a very strong tool, right? It's a very powerful tool to get people motivated into donating for things. I'm sorry?
How good you're at.
Right. Not just that. So targeted emotional blackmailing, right? That works really well. It's like, oh, Ibrahim, didn't you guys buy a new restaurant? Like it's like if you could buy a new restaurant, you could buy us a new masjid. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, is this how you want to create your legacy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So there are different ways to, you know what I mean, like to emotionally blackmail people. And the more information you have about people, the higher chance there is for that blackmail to happen. Is that a healthy way of doing it? I don't think so, right? I don't. And part of the reason for that is I really think you can mess with people's intentions, because instead of giving out of sincerity, you're giving out of guilt, right? And that's not something that we want to happen. So there. Yeah, you're going to say something? You had a question or no? Oh, okay. So that's one way of doing it. So you said the amount of emotional blackmail, yes, that can have an effect. What else can have an effect? Like, why is it that it's up and down sometimes? Sometimes they do really well, sometimes they don't. Right, so it depends, depending on the cause. Right, so there are certain things that it's very easy for people to get behind that cause, and there are things that are more difficult to get behind that cause.
Appealing?
Huh?
Appealing like that.
Yeah. So how appealing is that? So there are some causes that are just not as attractive. For major relief organizations, where is an easy way for them to make money and to collect funds? disaster, usually, right? Even for any of you that have ever gone to any of these events, all they do, like they'll put up a reel, right? They'll show they'll show a series of pictures, they'll show videos, people will be on the ground, they're like, this is Ahmed, he's missing his right arm, or they'll be like, this person got crushed under this person hasn't eaten in the past 3 days, you know what I mean? And they'll do that. And what happens to us as the viewer?
Emotion like kicks in.
Right, our emotions kick in, man. Like, and we're like, and what do I feel?
Sympathy.
No, not well. Guilt is a little bit of it, right? It's definitely. It's like you feel the sympathy is the stronger thing. It's like I have to do something, right?
No, really, like that the photographer was taking the pictures. The video.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing that's so here I'm gonna come back on this. We had discussed a little bit of it last week, but I want to continue the discussion a little bit. Yeah, you were gonna say something? No. Okay. So this person who's taking pictures, but like, okay, well, why are they taking pictures? Because it's effective, right? If I came in Islamic Relief or Penny Appeal or whatever these, any of these large organizations, and I said, okay, hey, we're doing a fundraiser for building roads in Morocco after the earthquake. It's right, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Okay, then the following week, you get a bunch of pictures of people who've lost their homes. Which one do you think is going to get the money? The pictures. Emotion is very strong, right? It's actually amazing how strong a motivator emotions are and sympathy is. Which one's actually more helpful to the country and the economy and the people? The roads. Their infrastructure. Like, listen, if I don't have the roads to get the food, like here, if I build roads for the people, automatically what's going to happen within the country, even if I don't give them any money or food?
It's gonna fall in.
Huh? So now I have people who are on the ground who are working, right? So there are people who are getting paid to do some of the labor work. And after the roads are built, what happens very naturally? Easier access to services, right? And once I have access to services, I can now have an exchange of goods, right? I can have an exchange of goods and services. And now what happens to that village or town that was once destroyed?
Automatically.
Right, starting to get rejuvenated. Or if I come and I just do a food distribution, what happens after a week?
Same thing. Back to zero.
You're back to zero, right? And you become dependent. But again, which one had my emotions and sympathies attached to it? Not the road. It's tough, right? So you're like, oh, like the camera guy, like, what's his problem? His problem is like us. His problem is us, being very honest. Because of him is why many of us want to give, or, I went to an Islamic Relief thing, and this is not unique to them, right? I just happened to be at that one at that time. And there was a doctor, he had a video of his accountant that was there, like in Gaza. He did a video, like a vlog of when he was in Gaza, like while he was in Gaza. And they had an overlay, like, they moved us here, and then they had to shift us to this hospital, blah, blah, blah. And it was just like, people there, it's like, yeah, we don't have any medication for this person. These 5 people, they all died of infected bandages because there's no bandages. Like, how does that make you feel? Right? It makes you feel broken, right? Like you really sympathize, and it's the thing that really motivates you, right? And it's tough, it's difficult. But is that going to solve the problem for the people in Gaza? Right? There might be like immediate help for some of those people at that time. So here, let me put it this way: Is emergency aid a problem? Here, let me put it this way: is it bad? No, it's not bad, right? Like I think there are some times where you need that initial emergency aid, but that emergency aid, it should be. The problem is that it's supposed to be a stepping stone, right? But for us, it has become a solution, and that's where it becomes a problem and an issue. I think I told you guys this last week. I was talking to like different relief organizations, and they were in Syria at that time. Like Syria has been at war since like 2008. So what has happened now, this is like a kind of a result of that. So they were like, well, we would go and we distribute food and stuff like that. And what happens to the local economy is all the farmers, where do they see the people going?
Distribution.
They're going to the distribution. And eventually, when the farmers don't have anybody to sell to, what do? They get, well, they get in line too. This is crazy. Like, when he told me that, like, my mind was blown. I was like, so you're telling me, like, emergency aid actually goes and, like, it just destroys the entire economy? He was like, yeah, essentially. He's like, but this is the only way the relief organizations are staying afloat, because they have to keep pouring money into this. It's unfortunate. It really is. And so we have to ask ourselves, if we're not thinking beyond the surface, are many of the relief efforts just to satisfy our own egos? It should be more attractive for me that I'm building a business center in a city. It should be more attractive for me that I'm building a solar island so they're able to produce their own independent electricity and energy. It should be more attractive for me that I'm helping them figure out their own ways to build wells, right? Or giving them internet access, right? These are very simple ways that are not super invasive, and it gives them the ability to be independent. Because the way we're doing it now, all we're doing is creating dependence. And for us, we're just getting that satisfaction time and again, which is very dangerous. Because the goal isn't satisfaction. The goal is, right, to help create a long-term solution. Yeah.
Would there be some kind of prioritization? You know, someone's about to die in the next 3 days.
Like I said, that's what I'm saying. Emergency disaster relief is a stepping stone. It's not the final solution. Like it has, like, everything has, it's a tool, right? So there are different tools that are available to the relief agencies. One of those tools is disaster relief, right? It's very necessary. You don't have, when there's an earthquake or there's a disaster or a tornado or, you know, a tsunami or whatever the case might is, well, what is the one thing that people don't have? They usually don't have food and water, right? They might not have medical supplies. Like, these are the three things that, regardless of what's happening, these are the essentials that need to be flown in, right? You can't just go in and give everybody $700 and be like, all right, you know, we're good to go. Allah protect us. But it's like there has to be some thought behind it, right? And there has to be a scaled introduction to these things. My question is like, are we just forever going to distribute? Or are we actually going to do something in these spaces and places? So what are some of the restrictions? How come some of these organizations, putting funding aside, how come they don't go into these places and help with infrastructure?
Cost, number one.
Okay, you're very close with when you say cost.
Or very close.
Okay, here.
Personal.
Okay, here. Cost. What do you think a majority of that cost is? And what do we call that? Corruption. Because the moment I start building infrastructure and I start doing all of these things, those politicians or those people who were getting a cut because they were allowing some of the relief in, what happens? It's just it's so toxic, dude. Like, in so many ways. It's crazy. What happens is, like, now their pockets aren't being lined anymore. So are they going to support the road project?
What if you set up some kind of accountability?
Sure. How many countries have that level of accountability? Huh? Ukraine? That's true. It's really unfortunate, man. It's really unfortunate. It's like it's just like this cycle of toxicity. You know, you just have so many layers.
That's not the global though, not the local.
So local.
It's a similar concept.
So locally, it's very similar too. We have food distribution here at the Al-Hijrah, and okay, where does the money for the food distribution come from?
Donations.
Right. Well, some of it is from donations. It actually our food distribution is one of the least popular programs we have in terms of the community donating to. It's not right or wrong. Like, I don't think the food bank, yeah, it's not right or wrong, right? I'm not here to judge anybody's intention. It's like for every individual, they have their own totem pole of importance, right? On like, no, this cause is more important, this cause is more important. And I'm not here to judge that. I think everybody should have their own. Like, whatever you think is important for you, that's great. Put your money there. But I'm telling you, when it comes to the food distribution, the food pantry, it's like the lowest on most people's priority in this community. So where does the money come from? It comes from grants. Grants. Yeah. Where does grant money come from? It comes from larger institutions. And where do the larger institutions get that money from?
Taxes. Investment funds.
Some of it comes from investment funds. And why do investment funds give them money?
Control policy.
Right, so
DEI.
so you have different large corporations putting their money into these different programs because certain politicians are pushing for those programs, and it allows them for their campaigns to be funded. So you want to talk, like, corruption is a worldwide thing. This is very local, like we're here at this level. Not to say that it's a problem. Like, again, is food distribution and food pantry a bad thing? Absolutely not. Like, I myself, like, at one point when I first came here, like 9 years ago, I went to a food pantry myself. Like, it serves its purpose. And
So
yeah.
you're saying like these large, like Saudi Arabia comes and builds a masjid,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
Are we saying that like this is necessarily a bad thing? If the intention is right?
Yes and no, right? It depends, because that's an individual endeavor, right? What a person's individual is, even us, like, so even at the Islamic relief thing, like where I saw the Gaza thing, like my heart was broken. I was like, no, I need to give money to this. I gave money. All right. Is that bad? Is that wrong? Did I do anything wrong? No, right? Like, I think people, when they see that there's a need, and even if there is a broken system, right? Because in general it's broken, right?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? I stop contributing? Right? You can't do that either. That's not fair. It's like, okay, you're creating all these dependents and all these people, like, it just becomes like a really bad. Okay, thank you. It's exactly. Okay, well, do I have an alternative? I don't. So what do? I just keep giving money. Right? That's what I do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created this pathway for me, so I'm utilizing it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, should we offer an alternative? Should we, like, open people's eyes? I'm saying, like, how many of you have even heard this conversation before? I'm just being honest. All goes back to Zionism, right? Like, why? Because it's like, it's difficult to share some of this stuff. It's difficult to talk about some of this stuff. Like, people, and not just that. How many people really want to even hear this?
That's the second
Right? Wasn't I happier like 20 minutes ago when I knew I could just give my money to Penny Appeal and they'll distribute it to somebody poor?
Yeah, I mean, like there are ways to sort of understand like what their overhead is, the cost structure is, right?
Sure.
Charity Navigator, all these things. So they do some diligence.
Listen, they're doing it. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not doubting. I'm not casting any doubt on any of these organizations in terms of their due diligence and what it is that they're doing, because, like I said, we are the ones that created the monster. Had we figured out and, like, even gone into these institutions, if we can create our own accountability, right? It's not difficult. It's like, okay, well, we as the donors, like, these are the public works projects that we're actually invested in. You want my money? Okay, here, this is where I want to put it. I can dictate that. I have every right to. Just like I have a right to dictate where the money is going, I can also dictate how it's spent.
Go find means for them.
Right? And the thing is, like, okay, well, what happens is people will vote with their money. And I can offer an alternative, and I can set up this, and I was like, I want to do it like this. None of these organizations are against these ideas, by the way. I want to be very clear and very open. But they've had the same problem, same issue that I'm presenting to you today. It can't be viable if people don't put their money to it and put their money behind it. And not just that, how quickly is it, or how easy is it, and how quickly can I connect a donor with where the donation is going in a picture versus giving you a half-hour explanation on why infrastructure is more important? Right?
It's
it's a nuanced conversation. And most of us, we're not ready for nuance. Right? We like things black and white. Okay, where's the pain and how do I fix it? That's essentially what we want. And when you start having deeper conversations behind like, okay, well, yes, you know, the pain is because of this, but how's your diet? Right? No, just give me Tylenol. Right?
Get over it.
Just give me the Tylenol. Give me the Advil. Okay, Advil's not working. Okay, give me the Motrin. Right? You know what I mean? Like, I just want a quick fix. I want a quick solution to that. And the quick solution to seeing somebody hungry is to give him money. It's not, okay, I need to spend time with him. I need to sit down. Is your poverty a result of a series of bad decisions, or is it because of circumstances? Okay. Well, if it's because of circumstances, I can definitely help you because you already have the skill set and you didn't have control over the circumstances. How can I platform you? And if it's because of a series of bad decisions, all right, how do I inform you to help you make better decisions? It's tough, right? Like these aren't easy conversations to have. And these aren't easy projects to fund. It's like, okay, you know, we want to fund 20 mentors to go into Kenya or go into Gambia or go into Ghana or go into, you know, many of these countries where like there's a lot of poverty. Are you willing to sponsor a mentor for a year? Again, difficult conversations. So I think I want to go through a couple of these narrations and I want to discuss them inshallah, and then we'll probably end for the winter break inshallah. Al-Hasan was asked about a person who earns a living but refrains from spending it, and another who earns more than his needs and then gives in charity. So basically he's asked, he's like, what situation is better? Somebody who earns just enough, or somebody who earns more and all that extra he gives in charity? So he replied, the one who refrains is better known for his lack of security in worldly matters, and refraining from it out of zuhud is nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
The one that refrains.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to say.
Sure.
The hadith, when they said, when Prophet ﷺ went to the masjid, there was a guy was sitting and then praying, and he said that he possibly could you have a work for a living, or my brother's supposed to work. Yeah, and he's a better because he makes money and spends. So,
I know. That's what I'm saying. I want to discuss. What does he mean here? What's going on? Here, our initial instinct is what? Which one is better?
The first one, I think the one that makes more and spends.
So he said the one who saves it, or the one who spends it? Huh? He's giving in charity, absolutely. Yeah. So our initial knee-jerk response would be that the one who's giving in charity. So he gives his reasons, saying the one who refrains is better for his lack of security in worldly matters. What does that mean? Yes.
He's on the safe side.
Tola.
But what about everything else you have to take care of? For example, personal expenses, family,
Sure.
everything else.
Okay.
So it could be a balance.
So he's saying that this person is better conditionally. And what is that condition? He's saying that, okay, he has the ability to buy more things. He has the ability to spend it. He has the ability to use it. But he withholds from doing that. And he says if he's doing it out of zuhud, then this is better for him. And what is the assumption here? That the one who earns extra? So this is a saying. It's not a statement of the Prophet ﷺ, but there's a statement of the Prophet ﷺ where he said that the upper hand is better than the lower. No doubt about that. So there's clearly some nuance here that's intended, because like I said, the knee-jerk initial response and understanding is that obviously the one that gives. He's saying here that, okay, this person who's holding on to it, this person who's refraining, if he's doing it out of zuhud, meaning that he has the ability to earn more.
Condition is zuhud.
That's it. So he has the ability to, zuhud is asceticism and being distant from the world. So if he's stopping himself because he doesn't want to become worldly, he's saying that that person is better.
Does this relate to like him knowing himself,
And that's a huge part of it, right? Over here, he's basically saying this. He's saying, is it better to be rich by choice, or is it better to be poor by choice? And what is Hassan saying?
Better be poor by choice.
It's better to be poor by choice. That's essentially what he's saying here. Why? Or why does he believe that? You don't have to agree, right? It's okay.
You're rejecting this world.
Huh?
You're doing it purposefully, not because you have to.
Exactly. And not just that, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, when I looked toward paradise, I saw most of the people were in it were what?
Poor.
Were poor. Does that mean that we have to strive to be poor? No, that's not what that means at all. And even zuhud, right? So this idea of zuhud and being abstinent from this world, what does that mean? Does that mean to be poor? Does that mean to wear like tattered clothing? Is that what that means?
No.
Like two types of poor though, by choice and without choice.
Okay, sure,
Right?
absolutely. So if I'm poor by choice, what does that mean and what does that look like?
Keeping it right there, this is poor by choice.
Sure.
How do we know the Prophet didn't see poor in paradise who weren't poor by choice?
But what does poor mean? Number one, right? That's important to keep in mind. And if I'm poor by choice, what does that mean?
Being a simple.
Yes.
Like a humble life.
Just being humble. Being humble and not being attached to worldly things. And the problem with being rich is what happens? Like what happens automatically? Right? Well, I hope not.
Buy things.
Huh?
You buy
You buy things, right? And it becomes very easy to become attached to worldly things. And for those of you who maybe you lived a life where you got a little bit of money, the moment we start getting money, what do we start doing? We start spending it, right? You upgrade. And the thing is, there might be things that you don't even notice. And after time, it's like, man, 6 years ago, I never used to buy new phones. Like, I just bought a new phone. Or like, man, I always said I was never going to buy a used car. And now, it's before I was like, man, I'm only going to buy used cars, and now I have a new car. Right? Like, so it becomes so easy. And how many of us actually take stock and notice that? Huh? It's tough. Yes.
If people who have a very small thing or very small money,
Yeah.
they end up like giving others, then they end up not themselves.
Yeah. This is not permissible. You can't do that.
People who do that, they end up like nothing, then they
No.
themselves, what they saw tithing, they give it to others. So
No. You have to have enough money for your own stability. You have to. So that you can give, and so that you yourself are comfortable. If I'm giving away all my money and I'm coming to the masjid and I'm like, oh man, I have rent due. Like, how involved am I going to be in my salah? Like we have to be very balanced in how we spend money. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells us, he says, لا تجعل يدك مغلولة إلى عنقك ولا تبسطها كل البسط فتقعد ملوما محصورا. He says, don't put your hand on your neck and don't open your hand, otherwise you will sit blameworthy and destitute. What does that mean? So what does this mean and what does this mean? It's not permissible for me to walk around like this? Huh. Middle of what? Like keep my hand here.
No, don't give too much. Don't give all your money and don't be a snitch.
Mumtaz. Excellent.
Don't
That's exactly what it means. Don't be stingy and don't be a spendthrift. Be in the middle. And don't save all your money, but don't spend it all. Be balanced. That's important. So he's basically saying, like, okay, if you're given a choice, why? Because it's easier to be detached from the world when you don't have a lot of world. Versus if you have a lot of worldly things, it becomes very easy to become attached to it. Abu Darda, he said, and Abu Darda, like for those of you that know about him, radiallahu an, very tough, very harsh character, extreme. Right? Yeah, like extreme is probably a good word. Like just very harsh, very tough. SubhanAllah. I think we have time. I'll share with you guys a story. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said to Abu Darda, he's like, okay, well, what happens if you get kicked out of Medina? He's like, He's like, yeah. He's like, I'll leave. And he's like, okay, well, what if you get kicked out of where you're from? He's like, I'll come back to Medina. And he's like, what if they kick you out of Medina again? He's like, I'll fight them. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said to him, he said, listen, no, you won't. If you do, he said, leave Medina at that time. And that's exactly what happened. It's like, so during the, I think it was the, I want to say the Khilafah of Ali, where like this actually happened, where like he was like kind of bouncing around, and he was ready to fight like when he came back to Medina, but he left by himself. He ended up dying. It was just him and his wife, and he died alone. His wife, he even told his wife like leave. He's like, it's okay. The Prophet ﷺ, he had told him, he said that, you know, you'll die alone, you'll be raised alone. So when he was on his deathbed, he was dying, he told his wife, he's like go. And the Prophet ﷺ had told him, like, you will die and strangers will come and pray your janazah. So like basically like some strangers just came across him, he was dead, they buried him, they made his janazah, and he passed away, radiallahu anh. So I just wanted to give you a background of his mindset and who he was. He said, I find it pleasing that I dwell in the upper floor of a masjid in Damascus and earn 50 dinar every day, which I give in charity. I do not refrain from buying and selling, but I desire not to be distracted by trade and commerce from remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Basically, what does he do with his money? He gives, he gives it away. Like I said, it's just important to understand who he was.
He's like working in the mosque?
No, he meant like if I had a shop next to the masjid
Yes.
and making 50,000, I'd rather not do it. And then,
Yeah.
So, but he was rich at the beginning. Like he was very wealthy.
Him, I don't remember specifically, but I know by the time
he
he accepted
Islam, and then he started giving away. Actually.
So for him, it was ibadah was like it was like the most important thing. He's like, I don't have time for money. Like that's how he was, radiallahu anh. Scholars differed regarding this issue. So some of them, they said that if one earns from lawful means and gives in charity from it, it is better than engaging solely in acts of worship and voluntary deeds. And this is something that we're all familiar with, right? This opinion is one that resonates usually with most of us. Secondly, others said that constant remembrance of Allah is superior and engaging in transactions distracts from it. And this is not most people, right? Most people are like, okay, that's not a practical way of actually living your life. Isa alayhi salam, he said, O seeker of worldly affairs, by refraining from them, you are closer to leaving them entirely. So again, there's this tug of war, right, between our hearts and the dunya, and how much we love, how much we want to engage, how much we want to pull away, how much we want to pull back, right? So it's a constant tug of war, it's a constant back and forth on how our relationship with this dunya should be. And Imam Ghazali, he says, at the least, engaging in righteousness should not distract from remembering Allah, and remembering Allah is greater and better. So these acts of righteousness, what is he talking about? So he says, engaging in righteousness should not distract from remembering Allah.
It's not bad, but as long as you don't forget your...
That's it. So what condition does he put here? Is like, hey, listen, go ahead, earn, spend, do what you have to do, as long as...
You do your right in Allah.
Right, as long as you're doing it with the right intention, you will never lose. You'll never lose, as long as you're doing it with the right intention. Even though I believe that if you spend your time instead making dhikr, I believe that this is a better use of that time, and Allah knows best. Inshallah, we'll be taking a break for the next couple weeks. I hope you guys enjoy your vacation. Inshallah, I'll see you guys in January. Bidhnillahi ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqin. Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Any questions?
So,
Yeah.
is there a difference of opinion in this matter? Like, it seems like two different directions, right? Like,
It is. It is, because if you actually look at these two, it's very representative of people's natures.
yeah.
You
Want to go worship all day.
Yeah,
work.
there are people who are just more inclined to like, man, I want to spend all my time in the masjid, I want to spend all my time reading the Quran, I want, you know what I mean, like, I want to keep doing those things. And there are other people on the other end, it's like, man, that's not a practical way of living your life. I believe that I can still function and do all these things and get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just the different natures, man. I honestly don't think there's a true difference of opinion of this. I believe it's just a spectrum of expression of worship in nature. Anyone else? Yeah.
Like beautiful things, and in order to have feel what industry you
Sure. Beauty is also subjective.